Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing dumper versus dumpy value. So before we get into the podcast, I just want to let you know about my website, dateme.tips. That's www.dateme.tips. Do you need help trying to save your crumbling relationship? Would you like advice on how to try and get your ex back? Or maybe you need an action plan on how to try and get a girlfriend or boyfriend. I provide email coaching on all of these subjects and can help your specific situation. Visit my website dateme.tips to find out more details. That's www.dateme.tips. You will also find on my site the books that I've written, my clothing range and other information. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing dumper versus dumpy value. So in today's podcast, I'm going to be discussing the differences and similarities between the values that dumpers and dumpies experience during and after a breakup. So first of all, we're going to be concentrating on the dumpy. So from the position of a dumpy, you have been told that the relationship is now over. This is not something that you wanted to happen, and you are feeling very helpless. You are experiencing a combination of drug withdrawal and grief. You are feeling that everything you ever wanted is gone, and that your future is looking very bleak and confused. So with all of this negativity swirling around you, and with the fact that you have had no choice in this decision, nothing you have said at this point has been able to change the dumper's mind, you are going to be feeling very low value as a dumpy. So irrelevant of how the dumpy was feeling before the breakup, I mean, some dumpies will be feeling lower value anyway. Some dumpies would have had no clue and was feeling quite positive about themselves, and then the big shock happens and all of a sudden they feel low value. You know, it doesn't matter what they was feeling almost beforehand, but as the breakup happens and as the reality hits, a dumpy will be feeling very low value. And it's incredibly important for a dumpy to balance the scales, okay? Because if you don't balance the scales, then you are very unlikely to be able to get your ex back, because nobody wants to be in a relationship with somebody who is very low value, okay? Because value is attractive, and that is one of the reasons why as a dumpy, you feel incredibly desperate to get your ex back, because all of a sudden you have inflated the value of the dumper even higher than they already were. Okay, so the dumpy is going through a lot of negative feelings and experiences. They're feeling very low value, and because of this, the dumpy is pushing the dumper even higher value. They're actually widening the gap between them. It's not just that the dumpy has become low value and the dumper has stayed at a regular average kind of level of value. They've actually pushed the dumper even higher. And whilst this gap is really large, the likelihood of trying to reattract your ex is very slim, because it is very attractive to find somebody who is of value. That is why a dumpy sees even more attraction in the dumper, because they're even higher value than they was. And that is why at this moment in time, the dumper feels even less attraction for the dumpy, because the dumpy is even lower value. So you need to be considering as a dumpy, how can you balance the scales? Okay, how can you make value as close as possible? And the way a dumpy can do this is to also consider how the dumper is experiencing these thoughts, feelings and emotions, and how the dumper sees their value system. And that is what we're going to be getting into in the second half of this podcast. So at this point, I just want to mention my weekly wingman service. I can be your wingman for the week, providing you with bespoke motivational encouragement. This can be to help with your love life, as well as ingraining a self-improvement mindset. The course begins with an audio call for us to speak, and then moves on to emails. For more details on this service and information on audio coaching and positivity boosts, please click the link in the description. So when we're thinking of the dumper and what the dumper experiences during a breakup, is obviously very different. The dumper made the decision to end the relationship. So the dumper is not going to be going through the agony and the distress of having a decision made for them. They're not going to be feeling unnerved by the way that the rug has been pulled underneath their feet without them realizing, okay? The dumper doesn't experience that. And hence the dumper will start to automatically, subconsciously feel of higher value because they have made a decision. Okay, imagine this was a workplace, okay? The dumper is like the boss and the dumpee is like the employee, okay? Because the boss makes the decisions and the employee has to follow them. And that is what has happened in a breakup. The dumper has made the decision and the dumpee has to follow it. So all of a sudden, there is already a changing and a split of value, irrelevant of what the value was like between both people before the breakup. We automatically have a split. The dumper is automatically feeling higher value, and as we said earlier, the dumpee is automatically feeling lower value. But as I also said earlier, the dumpee in their head is inflating the dumper even higher than the dumper sees themselves. And that is very crucial to consider, because the worst thing a dumpee can do is to actually give the dumper that knowledge, okay? So it's one thing for the dumpee to be considering the dumper as super high value now, but it's terribly, terribly bad if the dumpee actually lets the dumper know this. But how do they do this? It's not like the dumpee will actually say to the dumper, I see you as incredibly high value now. You know, that's not likely to happen. What happens, unfortunately, is the dumpee's behaviour tells the dumper subconsciously that they are of a much higher value than even they considered. And that is because if the dumpee begs, if they plead, if they try to reason with their ex, the dumper, all of these things are showcasing to the dumper that they are a higher value person than even they considered. Because all of the behaviour the dumpee is showcasing is very, very low value, very desperate, very needy. Please, 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 I'll do anything. I can't live without you. All of the comments that dumpees often mutter to their dumper exes. And when you're saying those words, I mean, think of them literally. Think about what I just said. I can't live without you. Or you make me a better person. All of those kind of things. Of course, they're going to inflate the ego of the dumper and they're going to widen the value gap between both people. So for the dumpee to stand any chance of trying to reconnect with their ex, you need to try to level the scales, okay? Because the dumper, or anybody else for that matter, is not likely to be attracted to somebody who is very low value and much lower value than themselves. So the dumpee needs to try to level the scales as best they can. And the first thing they can do is to use and follow my version of the no contact rule. So my version of the no contact rule is quite different to some of the different versions that you will find online. And I suggest that you subscribe to my podcasts so that you can familiarize yourself with my version of the no contact rule. I've done plenty of podcasts on the subject, but just to briefly go over it now in the most brief, basic steps. If you are a dumpee, then you should never contact your ex again unless they contact you first. And if and when they do, that is when you start to rebuild your connection. Now, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more hints and tips regarding it and how you can build this intrigue and interest in your ex, but they are for other podcasts that I've already done, and you should be checking them out on my channel. But for now, just remember what I've said. You want to be implementing my version of the no contact rule. This will mean you are no longer begging, pleading, reasoning with your ex. You are taking yourself away from them. You are no longer inflating the value of your ex. You are no longer saying to the dumper, you are great. You are even better than even you imagined, okay? You're not pumping up their self-esteem to the point of where their head might pop. And at the same time, you are also not lowering your own value. You already lost a little bit of value. You're already lower value because a decision has been made that you did not like and you are having to live with it. So what you want to do is make sure you don't become even lower value by begging, by pleading, and by inflating your ex's value and really widening the gap. You don't want to be doing this. You want to leave a gap as close as possible. The breakup's happened, the dumper is more valuable and is a higher value. The dumpee is of a slightly lower value just because of a breakup. But at that moment, it is not unsurmountable. You know, the gap isn't absolutely outrageously big. It's just due to the breakup. Now, if you can implement my version of a no contact rule, if you can go through self-improvement, if you can make sure that you become a better person each day, then you will start to slowly close the gap from your end. You will start to become a higher value person. And at the same time, the dumper will likely go through grass is greener syndrome. And this is when the dumper will experience thoughts that all of a sudden their world isn't quite as rosy as they imagined it might have been after the breakup. Maybe they've had a rebound and it's failed. Maybe they're now starting to get bored of single life. Maybe they're starting to worry about you, the dumpee, because all of a sudden you're behaving in the way I suggest and raising your own value. Because as your value raises, the dumper will start to notice through various ways. You don't have to tell them, and obviously implementing my version of a no contact rule suggests you don't tell them. But there are many ways you can subconsciously get this message across, and that is mentioned in other podcasts that I've done. But you want to be considering social media, you want to be considering mutual friends, and there are other ways to do this as well. But when you do this, when you get across your value in a subconscious way, when you showcase your value is rising, once the dumper realizes that their life is not as fantastic and spectacular as they envisioned, their value will start to slowly drop, and you will start to begin to close the gap and level the scales. And once you've leveled the scales, this is when there is an excellent chance that the dumper might reach out to the dumpee. There is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back, but if you do everything right, then you stand every chance of one day hearing from your ex again. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.
Yeah, if you miss your ex, we can help with that. Help you get him back, or we can help find you someone else. Yeah, Vincent Bo, the relationship coach, giving you some insight, bringing you a new approach. DateMe.tips, go and check the site, giving you advice, helping with your love life. Get your ex back, or move to the next. Ain't no sweat, you know Vincent Bo got you. Finding love ain't no problem. Yeah, DateMe.tips, check it out now.